But as I said, let me talk about why writing about this is important. Issues of management and management theory and management practices, in principle, cannot be separated from the society that you're talking about. So issues that have to do with Indian management practices, the India Way, as we call it in this book, in principle cannot be separated from what is happening to India. And let me just say a little bit about that. It is by now well accepted that India is, in fact, not only already an important player on the global economic stage, this importance in relative terms is going to increase. It is well accepted. Nobody argues against it. By the way, if someone had said this 20 years ago, people would have actually argued against it. Just by way of history, in the 1950s, after the Korean War, people talking about South Korea at the time basically were saying South Korea has no chance of getting anywhere. India is the country that's going to be the leader tomorrow. In 1965, when Singapore became independent, Singapore had a per capita GDP lower than India. It was a less developed country than India at the time. And today, 55 years later, Singapore has a per capita GDP that is 40 times greater than India, right? So the truth is, and we must speak, these are matters that at the end of the day, I'm an independent intellectual. The very lifeblood of intellectual discourse is what I call truth-telling. We must cut out the spin, we must cut out the smooth talking, we must talk truth to each other. The fact of the matter is, India's history between 1947 and 1991, viewed from very, very objective outcome measures, has been a disappointment. The years after 91, actually, India has done quite well, and wonderfully so. But while there were gains, I don't want to sort of, wash away everything between 47 and 91. But relative to other countries that were at similar stages of development or even behind India, India has largely disappointed between 47 and 91. And by the way, truth-telling is important because if you can't agree on this, there's really no more conversation to be had, because then let's just continue to do what we were doing before 91 and nothing changes, right? So when the truth is the victim right early in the discourse, nothing else is possible, including no corrective action is possible, because you already say, what illness? We don't have an illness. What's the need for any medicine? That's an aside. Not only that, something even more important has been happening, particularly in the last 10 years or so. George Bush was largely viewed as a president in the United States. This is the son, not the father. 43 as he's sometimes called, or W. George W. Bush, who was president for 8 years, is widely regarded as possibly one of the least effective presidents in American history. Historians say he was probably the worst president in America as an independent nation. He did a couple of great things. The one great thing that he did was, and I think he should be given credit for that, he really increased the geopolitical, geostrategic importance of India. The nuclear deal would not have happened without George Bush. So whatever he was doing, one thing he did right was India became much more important. I don't know if you have seen the newspapers, I think yesterday or today, the US is now talking about India as a major strategic partner. This has never happened before. This has never been said publicly before. And this is the point I wanted to make. Increasingly in the United States, at the highest levels of political power, not just the business leaders, people are starting to recognize that the one natural ally, and possibly in the long term, one of the most reliable allies that the United States can have in this part of the world is India. There are a number of reasons. This is not a talk about political science, so I won't go into them. But the US is starting to recognize this. What's interesting as well is this is related to increasing levels of discomfort about the rise of China. Whereas privately people might admit to the possibility that one day there might be actual physical hostility between China and the US. Virtually no one would actually say that this could happen between India and the US. Things have come to that point right now. And as, by the way, our economic interdependence continues to grow, this will become less and less likely. And in fact, this is not to claim credit for myself, but I happen to be part of the Indian American community as well, as is Bala, your founder and dean. In some small way, I think this level of comfort between India and America has been facilitated with the role that Indian Americans have been playing back in America. Another quick couple of things to mention. In 2007, the United States and large chunks of the global economy went into a very, very deep recession, almost a depression. Together with that was a financial crisis, the likes of which had not been seen since 1907, which was a year of a major banking crisis. The US economy almost melted down. By the way, the comparable example to 2007-2008 was not the Great Depression. It was, in fact, the crisis of 1907. The Depression had a different set of problems. As together with this, there has been a degree of soul searching in the United States where people are really asking, are there elements of the US model of management that need to be rethought, need to be re-examined, need to be repaired, even changed completely? I think few people would say, in spite of the crisis we have been through, that the US management model is completely broken. Some people might argue that, but the majority opinion is not that the model is completely broken. But there is a consensus that parts of it really need serious fixing. And the question is, where shall we look for answers? What's absolutely remarkable is that prior to 2007, if someone had said, the best performing Indian firms may actually hold lessons for the US management model, no one would have listened. But in fact, today in 2010, this is a question that people are willing to entertain. And the US, like any society, has its strengths and its weaknesses. One of its great strengths, however, is this is a truly pragmatic nation. When things don't work, US culture, US society, such people say, look, it doesn't work, let's change it. And they are happy to pick up ideas from anywhere in the world. There was a similar turning point in US industry's history in the 1970s, where the Japanese were, in America we have a phrase, they were cleaning their clock out. They were just really giving US companies a hard time. It later on transpired, if you went, for instance, into an industry like automobiles, what was really going on is that there were ideas that were essentially coming from America. The quality revolution started in America in the 50s with the work of people like Deming and Duran. Their work, no one was willing to listen to them in America. They went off to Japan. Japan really built its great corporations using quality as a major imperative. In the 60s, Japanese firms continued to outperform other global competitors. In the 70s, by the late 70s and early 80s, finally, American firms started to realize what was going on. And the very interesting story is that, I don't know where the point is. Right. Anyway, the point I want to make is, just as the quality revolution came back to America by way of Japan, there are some parts of what we call the India way, which actually have their origins in America.